So in today's video, we're going to look at weighted averages, specifically when it comes to scoring. And so we have a basic data set here, and then we're going to look at how to, first of all, create a basic weighted average, and then how to do multiple weighted averages, and just how those play together and what factors come into play. So let's jump right in with a simple weighted average. So we have the basic data here, so number of questions, number of correct, and then this is the score. And so here we have a type weighting. And so I'll get into this a little bit more in a second, but basically in this example, we have exams, tests, assignments, and practice. Here's the weights for those getting assigned here. And so for that, we can use this formula called average.weighted. And then we feed in that percent score, and we feed in those type weighting, and then we get that result. And so you can see that is different than our average here, which is just averaging that score. And so you can see it pulls it down just a little bit, and it's because some of these exams they didn't necessarily do as well on. I think over to the right here. And so this first one is just a simple single weighted, and we can do another one here. For example, we have a place where we can put in some manual weights, and I'm going to explain a little more on the size of those as well. But if we look here, we can see this average. We're taking those scores and our manual weighting, and right now we're coming up with the same as our regular average. And if you can tell here, it's because these are all the same. Now, one intriguing thing is when we do our combo weighted average, even though theoretically all these weights are the same, it still affects our average weight. And so the way the average weighted works is you can do a set of values, a set of weights, and then you can do a set of values again and weights again. And so even though theoretically we haven't changed anything with these manual weights, if we add that into this calculation, it still is affecting that result. And so you can see here that combo is a little less than our manual, a little higher than our type. And so it kind of pulled it up towards our manual or our regular average, even though it looks like we aren't doing any weighting. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, is if you want to exclude, for example, the manual weight, you can't just set them to the same. You really need to take them out of the equation entirely and then have this simple average weighted with only the factors that you want to apply. Another thing to keep in mind is that you probably want to pull these weights into a similar scale. And so for example, here you can see these are both percentages of 1. And so for example, here my type weighting, if we add all these up, it comes up to 100%. And so I'm evenly weighting these and distributing those. And so with these manual weighting, what we're doing here is we're actually converting our 5 and dividing by 10 to make it into a percentage. And so this manual weight then would be anything between 1 and 10. Just like that. Now, if we get rid of this and just do the straight value, let's keep an eye on these averages here. So here is that type weighted, that manual weighted, and that combo. So that combo is about halfway in between. And so if we get rid of this, let's take a look at how that makes it different. So I'm just going to copy and paste this formula across the board here real quick. Paste formula only. And then right now, if we look, that combo almost got up to our manual. So it really dragged it up. And the reason being is because we're using a different scale now. Because technically this is 5, even though it's showing up as 500%. That's actually 5. And so keep that in mind, and you can use that to your advantage as well. But it's just something to keep in mind if you're using multiple weights, is that if you don't want to unintentionally drag it a different direction, you do want to keep them in the same factor. And so it doesn't have to be a percentage. You could do all of them on a scale of 1 to 100 or 1 to 10 or whatever it is. But you just want to make sure that if you don't want one of those weights to overly skew your average, then just make sure that you're putting them in the same scale. And so I have some of the manual calculations here just to kind of give you an idea of being able to compare. And so here is a regular simpler average, just like what we have here. So this is just using the average formula, and this is doing the same calculation manually on that set. And so it takes that percentage scores and then divides them by how many there are. And that gives us our regular simple average. And then we have a regular straight average, and that is adding up all the correct answers, dividing them by the total number of questions, and kind of giving us a mathematical average here. So I'm not going to go more into this. I have a different video on straight versus simple averages, and I'll have a link to that below. But suffice to say, those are two different calculations there. All right, and then we have our type weighted here. And so the way the average weighting works is it's multiplying that score by our weighting. And so here we have, for this type weighted, we're multiplying each of those percentages by our type weighting and then dividing by the total of our weights. And so it's kind of it's an average calculation. We're just using a different form of it. And so that allows us to then equally affect those answers by the relative weights. And of course, manual weights works the same way. And then the combo would be something like this. So we're adding the combo of those weights and multiply by the scores and then divided by the total of both of those weights. To wind up this video, let me just show you how you can actually use something like this. And so we have these manual weights. So if you started with none of them, for example, you could go through and start entering them in. So one thing to keep in mind is you can't do this average weighted when you have all zeros. And so you do have to add at least one value in order to make that calculation. And then we can do the same accordingly. So we could add whatever manual weighting here. And this is helpful if you have certain ones that you know are a bigger priority, regardless of the type or category weighting. So we could set these up just with 2 across the board, just as a placeholder. All right, and then here, this type weighting, what I'm doing here is I just have these set here. So you could set this up in your data set with whatever you're doing, whether it's scoring or whatnot. And you can set the different categories you have. And then what I'm using here is a simple XLOOKUP. And so I'm looking up this EX in my table here and returning that weight. And so I have a video on XLOOKUP as well in the description below. So if you need a little help with this, that will help you there. And so then I just drag this across, and then it gives me that type weighting dynamically. And so if one of these, for example, got changed to exam, you can see that type weighting just changed to 60 from 30. And the manual weighting again is just taking whatever we have set here and converting it. So you could enter in that percentage directly in here, and then you wouldn't need this divided by 10. And so that's really up to you on how you want to set that up and what will work with your data. All right, so that is it for today's video. I hope it was helpful for you. And if so, please like and subscribe and check out the other videos on our channel. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.